Well, hello, everyone. And hello, Brianna. Briannalgeorge is here with us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be with you today.
Thank you for coming to the Junk to Jewels with Georgette Beck podcast. We're going to dive right in today for the sake of time. I am so blessed to introduce Brianna to you. I had the pleasure of meeting her through Jen Hatmaker, an author and writer and speaker, an awesome woman of God. She's written many, many books. You'll have to look her up. But we had a really cool experience by being invited to a book launch team of over 500 women. Yes, 500 women and a guy. We had a guy on the team too. And we were all invited to Texas. Someone said, why don't you have a party for all of us launching the book? And she said, if you all plan it, I'll show up at my house. So we all went. We all came to Texas and it was just a great experience. It's cool. So I'm excited. So Brianna is a writer, a singer, a storyteller. She's an encourager, speaker, coach, mom, and a teacher and a wife and a friend. And they live in Tennessee, and she has a marriage of 20 years. And I love that. I'm in a second marriage, and May will be our 20 years, but God's a God of second chances, first chances, and it's so good to keep us through life. So we're going to dive right in. Brianna, could you just introduce yourself like in your own words?
Sure. So I am in my 40s and I just turned 43 last week, 2 weeks ago. And I'll be honest with you, the 40s have been incredible.
Happy birthday.
Well, thank you. They've been incredible and incredibly awful at the same time, just because you're just learning so much about yourself, which is great and awesome. And all the things that are unhealed in your life also seem to really come to the forefront of you actually acknowledging that those things are really unhealed. And so that's kind of been my journey for the last 3 years now of really not just learning what was really unhealed, but actually healing them, actually doing the work to heal. I am a mom. I have 3 sons. My oldest, Dominic, is 17. He's a senior in high school. So we are doing all those senior things, which is super fun. It's bittersweet. It's fun, but it's sad, but it's amazing. I don't really know how to describe it yet because I'm still in it. So I'm processing as we go here. And then I have my middle son who is 12 and he just started middle school. And he is the stereotypical middle child in every possible way. And then my youngest, Zeke, was very much a surprise. We did not find out that I was pregnant with him until I was 23 weeks along. Just because I know, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I know people say, oh, that'll never happen to me. I was totally one of those people. And then I thought I was pregnant in 23 weeks. What? And then he came early at 37 weeks. So he was very much a surprise. Not surprised by it at all, because that's just the way God works in my life. And he is 6. And so, yeah, I've been married for 20 years. About a week ago, it's my birthday and then my anniversary. My life has completely changed. Since I met you 10 years ago, my life has completely done a 180 in so many ways, as far as writing and just all the plans that I had 10 years ago completely changed. So, yeah, I mean, that's me in a nutshell.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. And we're going to dive right in. So for the singer part, what do you love to sing?
So I'm on the worship team at our church. And so that's where I primarily do most of my singing. Again, in my 40s, I've hit this, I'm in the car and I don't want to hear anything era. And so the radio is kind of off and I just drive in silence. So really anymore, I only sing at church, it seems like. And even when I'm just doing worship team but I do enjoy it. But I don't know, something about my 40s, I'm just like all in the silence these days.
Now, were you always a singer?
Yeah, I grew up learning to play the viola. So I was a musician, am a musician. I haven't played my viola as much. It was my first major in college was viola performance. And singing kind of just came with being a musician, just learning melodies and harmonizing. I do sing like a viola to my worship leader's chagrin. I was just like, you don't sing like a normal alto. I was like, oh, I played the viola. She's like, oh, I get it now. So it's just singing. I love singing. But yeah, it's just a part of me, I guess.
I sing by myself. I sing in church. And I have an ear for the music, and I love music, like piano playing. When I was little, my mom got lessons, and it's one of those regrets I have as a teenager that I stopped. I was going to go on the concert series, recitals, and those are one of the things your parents see something. And as a kid, I fought her, and then she was just too tired, so she's like, "Fine." But that's one of the things. But I love how God brings things back to us, because music has come back, and my dream is that in all my projects, that music will be a part of it. So let's see, writer, you have several books and things under your belt. So can you share each of those books?
Sure. I mean, this past year has really been the boon of the books. I struggle. I'll be honest with you. Imposter syndrome really hits me hard sometimes when it comes to writing. I've been writing all my life. I've always been a reader, always been a writer. I loved doing creative writing when I was a kid. I was completely the nerdy kid who loved to read books, totally. And I just never grew out of that. So, I started just writing a blog, 10, 11 years ago. That's how we got to know each other, because of Jen Hatmaker and blogging for her book launch. And, I did it from home, kind of semi-professionally, did like editing and things like that. And then, like I said, I hit my 40s and I thought, wow, I really want to do something. Like, I've been saying I have this book for like the longest time. Part of my story is I grew up in Ohio, in Northeast Ohio, and I moved to Columbus, Ohio at 18, went to the Ohio State University, go Buckeyes, and lived there for about 12 years, met my husband, had our first 2 children. And then just about 10 years ago, just before we met, my family moved to Middle Tennessee. And we moved there because basically God told us to. And it's a crazy story that someday will be written into a book. It will be. It's just the timing hasn't been right. But all of that to say, in the last year, I finally did it. After all the blogging, all the creative writing, all the things, I finally did it and wrote 4 journals, basically. I'm a huge journaler. That's something I've done all my life. And especially since I hit my 40s, it has been a form of therapy for me as well. And so the 4 books have to do with emotional healing. When I first wrote the first one, which was my anger journal, I wrote it because I was in this very angry space for myself. Just life didn't turn out the way I thought it was supposed to turn out. Has anybody ever experienced that before?
Can we just touch on that? Let's just, because our listeners are all faith and all backgrounds, but as a Christian, or I was a goody because I was always that performer girl, afraid to mess up and always tried to follow the rules. When life happens or we make a mistake or just something happens to us, I went through, I had something that happened that I was like, I jumped God and I trusted you. The anger from, why did that what happened? Why?
Right.
And then you feel guilty for feeling those things, right?
It's a crazy cycle. It's this, anger is, so my educational background is in psychology. And so, just touching on that and having that in the back of your head, in my head, all these years, you think the right thing. You think, oh, I'm fine. I understand. And then you also add in the good girl syndrome that a lot of women have grown up with in the church. And being angry is a horrible thing. Right. And so what do you do with that? Right? What do you do with that feeling? And that's where I was stuck. And anger really is a symptom of something deeper going on in our lives. It's usually with shame or anxiety, embarrassment, unsurety, fear. There's so many other feelings besides anger. Anger just kind of blankets over those. And a lot of people just don't go deeper than that. And so that's how it started for me. As I said, I'm just so angry with so many things going on in my life. They're out of my control because I have teenagers. Imagine that. And I've been married for almost 20 years. And my career, I'm not sure what is going on with that because I worked from home as a stay-at-home mom for a million years and wasn't really sure what to do with my life. So I was angry. I was so angry and I didn't know what to do with it. And so I just started journaling about it. And that's how the first journal was born, is I wrote it for myself. I was like, every single time I get angry, I'm going to write about it.
And does it for me too, since I was a little girl, and then during when life had a trauma there or hit at bottom,
Yeah.
it helped me talk. I talked to God,
Right.
me anyways, and then I would make lists. I would dream. I would pray. I would cry. I would be upset. Yeah, all those things. But then later, it actually brought reflection and truth. I understood things. Like God used our own heart cries or words on the page.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. I mean, so I started with the anger journal, and then I started so over this past year, I've also had some health crises. I was diagnosed about 8 months ago. Yeah, about 8 months ago with a severe, my brain has stopped. Severe, I can't even think. Holy moly, my brain completely stopped.
That's like my brain.
Adrenal dysfunction, severe adrenal. Okay, back up. So I was diagnosed with severe adrenal dysfunction. And if you've never heard of that before, it's a real thing. And you basically hit rock bottom and you can't get out of bed. No energy whatsoever.
Is it a depression?
It is, but it's like a different form of it. Your adrenal glands basically stop working. What was happening is this crazy cycle was happening where my cortisol levels were so high and went so high that they ended up bottoming out. And it was just this cycle. And then they would go high again and then they would bottom out. And so my adrenal glands completely were overworked and I had no energy. I couldn't put two words together. I could not function. I still, as you can see, having some of it where the words just don't come, or my mind just completely blanks out and I can't think of the word, and you feel like a crazy person. And so I've been working through that. It takes at least 6 to 8, 10 months to get to a normal, which is, about 8 months ago, as I was diagnosed, started actually doing treatments and the vitamins and the supplements and all the good things probably about 6 months ago. So I still have a little bit of work to do. I had gained a ton of weight. I've lost a good amount of it. Still have about 30 pounds to go to just feel my best. But yeah, so then my second book, because of all of that, was about self-care because I was not taking care of myself. The second journal then was about, self-care, how to really take care of yourself. And so often when we talk about self-care, we think candles and bubble baths and the spa day and treat yourself kind of idea, right? That's what
flowers. I love to send myself flowers.
Exactly. And those are all wonderful, beautiful self-care things. But what I really have discovered for myself for self-care is getting to know myself in a deeper way and what really makes me tick. And so the second journal was born with lots of different prompts that go really deep, kind of therapy in book form, if you want to say that. Like if you had a therapist asking you questions, kind of what it turns out
privacy of your own page. I love that.
Yes, exactly.
Love that.
Yeah. And then part of the whole journey for me in this last year and hardship and just her anger and emotional turmoil was going through grief, because I was grieving this person I thought I was and this life I thought I was going to have when I was in my 40s. And then also my teenage son lost 2 really good friends to suicide this last year.
Oh,
yeah.
That's a hot one.
Right.
We were just, oh my gosh, the mental health topic alone, there's so much. We just lost my uncle to suicide. it's just, and then to be at your son's age or any person who has to experience that, there are no answers. There are no easy solutions. There are no, here, it'll feel better in 6 months or a day, no.
Yeah.
And then it's a child going through this pain. Ow.
Right. Yeah. And so I wrote my third journal, which was grief. It was about, I am not okay. We call it the I am not okay grief journal, because sometimes you're just not okay. And, grief is encompasses more than just losing a person. That's what we think of most of the time when we think of grief, right? But what if you lose a relationship or a job or a dream? What if you lose your health? There's so many things. Whenever we have a loss, we have grief. And grief is not linear. It's not just this line of getting better. There's these dips and valleys and circles and crazy cycles you go through with grief. And so in dealing with that for my son, for myself, just women that I talk to on the regular, the third journal came about. Again, that book therapist of asking those questions and giving prompts to work towards healing in grief, wherever you are in your grief journey.
Grief can, grief can be from a death of a relationship. The divorce folks, the living deaths. Grief can be from loss, like a hope for a relationship, as in other people in your life. I'm in a blended, and I have a step family, and I'm in that process right now, even after almost 20 years, because relationships are a two-way street. It's heart to heart, and if not both hearts are on board consistently, and I'm such a I'm a heart girl.
Yeah.
There's grief there with what you had hoped it could be, and it's not that it's bad. It's just, I'd hoped I would have heart daughters or, heart to heart, like people, but with even, your kids, their dreams, maybe something set them off the path like
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
So grief is a whole bunch of things, or something happened in a health or a surgery mishap, or something wasn't
something that just did not meet the expectation. Whenever you have an expectation that is not met, you go through a grieving process. Whether it's, big G grief or little g grief, grief is grief. And every single person in the world is touched by grief at some point in their life.
And we all handle it. Our journey, every journal is going to be different, because there is no set A, B, C, D, E. There are certain emotional things we can say, here's the emotions that will come to you. Guaranteed, eventually you will experience these different emotions, but all in your own way and time, because we're all different.
Absolutely. And that's why the journals are so great, because I feel like that's why God led me to do journals rather than writing full books about this, or even like novellas, because I feel like you're writing your own story in a journal. Yeah. And that in of itself is such a therapeutic process and helpful in healing. So then the third book was grief. So then the fourth one, and honestly, when I started this, I did not expect to make it like a series.
You volunteered for us all to walk through these journeys.
Exactly. It became this emotional health series. So then the fourth one has to do with this lovely girl that I know who I spent a lot of time with, and my son spent a lot of time with his girlfriend, and we've just talked a lot, and she deals with anxiety. And so the fourth book was about anxiety, and the fourth one was really something that I have dealt with my entire life as well. And so the fourth one, we talk about anxiety, and it's the same process, different prompts to elicit different things in your brain to kind of allow thought processes to come to yourself. And it's going to look different for everybody, but it's part of the healing process, is writing this out. And then I think part of it too, that is so helpful, that helped me, that really kind of prompted me to do these journals, is looking back at old journals. If you are a writer at all and you journal, just seeing where you were 10 years ago compared to now. I look back at my journals from 10 years ago when we first met, and that person is a completely different person. And it's so healing in so many ways to be like, wow,
Free.
I've changed and grown.
Good base, like free. And we don't always realize it, you know?
Yeah.
So right here with ourselves, it's right in front of us. And we know ourselves the best, and we only see our flaws or worst parts or things we're still struggling with. Why do I do this still? Or why is it causing me heart pain? Why am I crying about this? Or
absolutely,
just let go, let God, and do my life.
Absolutely. So, absolutely. So then all of that brings us to my fifth book, which I'm super excited about. It is a journal, but it's more, I'm calling it less a journal and more of what I'm calling a guided experience, because it's going to be more than just what the last four were, where it was just prompts. This one's going to be a little bit more where it's more of an experiential kind of thing. And this one is called From Ashes, and it is all about burnout. Honestly, that's where I have been. And so this one is really close to my heart because I'm still suffering from it. Like, I'm not fully healed yet. So as I'm writing this, you know, I keep adding to it because I'm like, oh yeah, that's been helping me. And I didn't even realize that that practice is really helping me as I'm recovering from burnout. You know, and burnout recovery goes anywhere from like 8 months to like 8 years. No joke. Depending on how burnt out you are.
It hits you sudden. I've heard, I've experienced burnout in different ways, but it hits you sudden, and then you're like, uh-oh, I can't operate like at all now. It's too late. Like yeah. So
yeah.
You know, I love that you said you're still in process.
Yes,
so it's important to know you're definitely relatable to all of us, to everyone. Right. It is a journey.
That's part of the crazy in all of this, is that when all of these journals kind of started, I was in burnout and I didn't have a word for it yet. Like, I didn't know what it was. I just knew it was grief, and there was some anxiety, and I was angry, you know, and then I wasn't taking care of myself. And that all was the burnout. And so this book is taking me so much longer because I'm in burnout and because I'm trying to do all the things that I'm saying we should do when you have burnout. I'm trying to do those practices. So it's taking me a lot longer because I'm resting a lot more, and I'm okay with that. And that's part of the process. And that book gets released in February. It's being released on February 14th, which is Valentine's Day. But it also happens to be this year Ash Wednesday for the liturgical folks. And the book's name is From Ashes. Oh, you gotta love that, right?
Yes, the heart, the love, and the Ash Wednesday. Because and then Beauty from Ashes. It's God's great love story for all of us.
Absolutely.
The Beauty from Ashes.
Absolutely.
Oh, and all your books are on Amazon, correct?
Yes.
Or all bookseller like Barnes and Noble, or all the different ones, or just Amazon?
Just on Amazon right now, because I am a self-published author at this point. I'm really hoping, you know, that dream comes true someday, but, you know, small blessings, starting small, and that's okay because I'm just doing what God is telling me to do.
Brianna, I just want to ask you, how are your sons doing?
They're great. I really, you know, children are very resilient. And I think that's been, as a mom, that is something that I really want to teach my children, is how to become resilient. Because so often what we're seeing, I love every generation, but what we're seeing in a lot of younger generations is that they're not as resilient in certain ways. And so I want them to learn that it's okay if you need help, and that that's part of building resiliency, is not doing everything on your own, but they're doing great. They're awesome.
I'm so glad. Now, have you had opportunity to share these journals with others in your community?
Yeah. So it's really interesting. The church that as a young adult I went to back in Ohio, one of the women there she's like a life coach through the ministry. And so she actually keeps buying copies of my book to give all of her clients, because she said they're amazing tools and resources. So she's a huge proponent for it. And it blesses me, you know, that someone buys my book. You know, obviously that's awesome, right? But just that she believes so much in it.
And it's helping a lot of people.
Yeah. And that's why I wrote them. You know, I mean, I don't expect to become a bazillionaire selling books on Amazon. I wrote them because I wanted to help people. And just knowing that they help so many people is amazing. I've given several copies out at women at my church. And just there's been a few opportunities where if I have some on hand where I just feel like a prompting from someone to give. I had a coworker, I work in the education system, and I had a coworker who has dealt with grief in the last few years from losing her son. And I just felt like God told me to give her a copy of it. And, with coworkers, that can be weird, like you don't want to,
little
you
trick.
know, yeah. And so,
something good about your journaling, this book, these books, not everyone is comfortable self-reflecting, and not everyone for sure is comfortable sharing their emotions and their inside. And I feel like this is a real great, safe thing to start for those that have never even written anything or talked about anything. And I believe this is so powerful because it's like, just come on in gently. And it is self-love in a way. This is for you special, and it's for your eyes only, and for your pace,
absolutely,
your timing. And they're going to be amazed that.
Yeah. And that was why I
like that.
That's why I went with the journal format, and the prompting journal format, because so many people I know, when I mentioned, oh, you should start journaling as a resource, as something to do, they're like, well, I'm not a writer like you.
Yeah.
I was like, you don't have to be a writer. Like, you just put pen to paper. And, that coming from someone who writes professionally, it seems like whatever, that's like someone who runs a marathon saying, just put shoes on and run,
Yeah.
So it feels really daunting. But I feel like with the journal format, with a prompt, everybody can answer a question. Now, how you answer that question is how much you're going to get out of it, right? If you really reflect and really think about the questions being asked, you might get more out of it. And in the journals, I put some resources, because like I said, so often we say, I'm mad, but that's such an overused word. We either say we're mad, sad, happy, scared. That's like the 4 that we use most of the time when we explain an emotion. But so one of the resources in each journal is, hey, a couple pages of a whole bunch of different words that we could use for feelings that kind of prompt that idea of, are you really feeling shame? Are you really feeling, afraid? Are you really feeling, some other feeling rather than happy, sad, mad,
That is a very good point you brought across, because the overused emotions. I'm a follower of Anthony Robbins, and his book, The Giant Within Us, I think it was called. I can't remember the exact title, but diving into what are you really feeling? Is it just what's anger? What are you anger? Fear? What are you afraid of? And fear of loss, or fear. I learned fear of success even was something. And then you go deeper with that. I learned with that fear of success was actually fear of the unknown.
Absolutely.
So whatever they're experiencing, ask what emotion. There's so much more than, like you said, that's a point you brought up, because you get to the root of it when you ask.
Yes, and that's the point, is to get to the root. Because let's be honest, not everybody can afford therapy. I mean, I hate that.
Yeah,
I hate it. It's so expensive, and if you don't have the kind of insurance that will help you with that, sometimes people have nothing, but they are not able to afford it. So this is a resource to help you kind of get on your way, dip your toe in. You completely self-pace, whatever pace, especially with the grief journal. I put a note in with every book, kind of like this is the book. This is what it is. This is how you use it. And in the grief journal specifically, I don't put dates at the top. It's not an everyday thing. For some people, they might write in it once a month. They might write in it every day. Some people might write multiple times a day. Maybe you only write once a week. It's wherever you're at. And so that's the journal side of it. Now, the guided experience is going to be a little bit different from Ashes, because it is going to be more of like a continuation, like something you have to do on a consistent basis. That's part of it. But, like with grief, it's not linear. So one day you're fine, you're happy, you're laughing, you're fine, like you're with people, like it's no big deal. And the next day you crash because there's so much loss and pain, and something triggers just a memory or a thought that just you crash. So that's part of it with the first four, is that it is very self-paced because we're all in different places, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's definitely okay. So I love, let's talk about marriage. That 20 years, God bless you both. And such integrity, like such courage. So there's so many adjectives I can think of right now, because I'm in the second chance, and we're about to hit the 20 mark, and we've had a lot of acclamation. But even in the first marriage, you know, there are pros and cons. There are things that help you in a first marriage that just naturally help you. But then there's just life. And with so much coming at people nowadays that, oh my gosh, there's just, the list is endless. So share if you don't mind, whatever you're comfortable sharing, some of the valleys and mountaintops, the junk to jewels, and then some of the things you learned and what you guys went through together. And I love the fact that you met after college. That's one thing I just have to say. My first marriage, because I was all set to go to Oral Roberts University right after high school. So all set. But I was in a relationship with someone. I learned later, it's generational repeat. I was too afraid to let go and like that loss of love, and I had abandonment things.
Yeah.
So I did not go to college. A year later, I married. So I'm a big education proponent. I'm like, go get your education. I don't care if you never use a degree, go to technical school. It is the whole educational process that helps you know who you are. So I'm so like, you guys had that. You both, right? You both went to university first, or had some education?
My husband did. He's actually from California. And so he went to school for a couple of years and then moved out to Ohio to be with his mom, who lived in Ohio. And he did not finish his degree. But at the time I was finishing, I was almost finished with my degree when I had met him. But yeah, experience is one of the best teachers.
Perspective, it gives you that.
Absolutely. And just going through the educational experience, secondary educational experience, is going to help you get to know yourself. You know, as much as you can as an 18, 19, 20-year-old, because you have the life experience.
But that's a better like than someone like myself that is just coming from the home, like an over controlling kind of home. So I didn't have a lot of freedom. I didn't do a lot of dating and all that. I kind of got married to get out of the house and to have intimacy. Right. I didn't know honestly, that. I didn't know that, but I love it.
That story is very similar for so many women that I talk to, because especially coming from, I hate to be stereotypical, but from a Christian home, that seems to be the case for a lot of women, where they go from daddy's house to husband's house. And it
doesn't always help us in our life journey to be so protected, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely.
School or going to have some experiences like that, meeting other people from different backgrounds and cultures, and having that time to know who you are, what you are. You don't even know. So you started with that.
Yeah, I was born and raised in a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio, came down to Ohio State as an 18-year-old and went through a few years of school, had some college boyfriends, made a lot of really not good choices through college. I'll be completely honest with you. I'm raised Catholic, went to Catholic church all my life, went to public school, didn't go to Catholic school. So had a little bit of that rebel girl just waiting to come out, and went away to college and made some really, really poor choices. I do regret them. Some of them I really do regret, but so many of them make me who I am today, because I have those experiences and I know what I don't want, and I know what I don't want for my kids. I met my husband, I was 21. I met my husband and we were married 2 years later. I met him online before that was like a cool thing to do.
Really?
I met him on Yahoo Personals back in 2001. And that was, back then you didn't meet people from the internet because they were going to kill you, like you just didn't do that.
Yeah.
Today is completely different. That's how a lot of relationships start.
Yes.
We met through Yahoo Personals. The story goes, I had a really bad breakup with a boyfriend, and I was depressed and sad and oh, poor me. And my roommates were so fed up with me that they created a Yahoo Personals account for me and started signing me up to go out with all these different guys from our campus. And they were terrible. I mean, the worst dates. So many stories. And I found out what they were doing after like the third or fourth date. I was like, these people are terrible. Where are you finding them from? Oh, we signed you out for a Yahoo Personal. What? Like, are you kidding me? But I took it over, and the first person that messages me is my husband, Jason. And there was a picture of me, and I had blue eyes, and in the picture, they were really blue. You know, it was a disposable camera picture, by the way, because that was a thing back then. And he said, your eyes are so beautiful. And my screen name was Bright Eyes Bree. Yeah. And so he started talking to me. But here's the thing is I did not want to go on a date with him. He had a picture of himself, and his first line, like his byline, I don't know if personal lives were the same way, but he had like a byline, and it said, yo, Caro Jesus.
What did he say?
Yo, Caro Jesus. And he had a picture of himself with a chihuahua on it, and it said, yo, Caro Jesus. And then his bio was how he was a new Christian and how he loved the Lord and, you know, was a good Christian boy, basically. And I thought, boring, because I was not there in my life at all. Like,
I mean, so honest. So honest.
And so we started talking on AIM, AIM, which again, showing my age here.
How's our age?
Yeah, like, we started chatting back and forth for weeks and weeks. And he kept asking me out, and I said, no, you're boring. No way. Finally, it was over spring break. The roof of my apartment caved in.
Oh my God.
Yeah. My one roommate was out on spring break, like had been gone on vacation. And then the other roommate and I, we were stuck at home eating ramen noodles, and the roof caved in. I told him about this, and he asked me if I would go out if he could take me out to dinner because I was done eating ramen noodles. And we went out on a double date, his roommate and him and my roommate and I, and we've been together ever since. Like, and it's been 20 years of crazy.
I love it.
Crazy.
I love it. So my journey is like, I had to learn later. So when my first marriage fell apart, it was during the single mom years that I was dating and learning, and education was brought back. God does that, doesn't he? He restored my education destiny to me and brought college back around, and it was beautiful. And then my husband, here's what I tell with dating advice, like, or when people always want to know, when do you know if he's the one? Well, I just have to say, if there's not a lot of questions, and if it just flows one day into the next day, into the next, it's the one. Because before that, if I was you're trying to fit a square in a peg hole, or if there's too many differences, you know, first off, God is I was going to ask you your Jesus story. So we'll come to that hopefully quick. Yeah. But that's the thing. Like, if they're not of your heart value, if they don't treat you with respect, run. If they don't hear your no, run. My guy, this one, I had certain boundaries I was trying to live up to at all costs. I wasn't always successful, but I knew from my heart of hearts, I didn't want any guilt. I didn't want to start nothing. And we kept that boundary, and we knew if we crossed over that we weren't proceeding. But the other thing was, he just kept calling me. And then when there were doubts, because listen, let's all be truthful, you know, living with God and Jesus, you know, he helps you, but you're afraid to step out of that nest. You're afraid to make a commitment. You're afraid to leave what you feel is safe and comfortable, what you've known all your life. You got to take the plunge. And then life's not always going to be hallmarky great. There's going to be challenges. But
there are a lot of
a challenge, God will give you this sign with peace. So if there's peace and it's flowing, and he respects you, you respect him, and you guys are finding things in common that you love to do together, and that's keep going, right?
You know, so our story is different in the sense that, like I said, I was born and raised Catholic, and my husband was a new Christian. My dad actually was studying to be a priest before he met my mom. He was in
wow.
Yeah. And then obviously left the seminary and married my mom. So my family is very Catholic, and there's
I was a
nothing wrong
Catholic
with
too. I got
that. Yeah,
to
and so
communion.
yeah, and so my family was not happy when they met Jason that he wasn't Catholic. That was a deal breaker in my family.
Oh,
Yeah. And so my family was not supportive of us getting married. And I remember I had so many questions because I was a good girl and I, had my rebellious period, but I was still really a good girl and I wanted my parents' approval. And that's something that in my 40s, even my 30s, I've been working on for a long time, is not to be a people pleaser. But right. And so, but part of that was there was one experience very specifically that really told me that I knew my husband was supposed to be my husband, because there were so many arguments with my family. And, I basically was given the choice to go with my husband and lose my family, or stay with my family and lose my potential husband. And it was heartbreaking and hard and trauma.
yeah.
But I remember very specifically, I went home to visit my family for Christmas and my husband, Jason, was not invited. And so I went home and my dad, almost from the first moment I was in the home, started yelling at me and getting mad at me about Jason and this relationship. And he said to me, Brianna, what do you even know about this boy? Like, would he stand in front of a gun and die for you? Because I'm your dad and I would do that for you.
Wow.
And that, right. And it shook me because I thought to myself, I don't know. I don't know if he would do that, because we had only been dating for about 6 months at this point.
That's a great question. Your dad was right on. Wow.
Yes, he was. But here's the thing that's really crazy.
But yeah,
it kept going on. Like, my dad kept asking me all these questions and and they weren't even questions. It was more accusations, is the way it felt. And now I can articulate that now. Back then I couldn't.
Right.
But now I can articulate. They felt like accusations. It wasn't healthy. And so that evening, it was Christmas Eve, that evening, went to midnight mass with my family, came home just miserable because I really wanted Jason there. And I remember calling him, at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And as I got on the phone with him, he said, what's wrong? Like, you're not yourself. And just said, I just don't know. Maybe we're not supposed to date. Maybe we can take a break. And he says, Bri, what are you talking about? He says, Brianna, I would die for you. I would stand in front of a gun and take a bullet for you. And even now, that
was a sign. Oh my gosh.
I know that was the Holy Spirit. That was the Holy Spirit speaking to me and saying, but wow, husband, this is your husband. How much more clear do I need to see it for you? And from that moment on, I never questioned it again. And we got married. And through the hard, when my parents didn't even want to come to my wedding. And so our marriage started very difficult. We were just us. It was just us. We didn't have family. We didn't have a support system. We had just us. And in so many ways, that was terrible. And in so many ways, it was amazing, because my husband really became my best friend.
And
we only had each other. Had each other. Yeah.
That's one of the things that help, that sadly families make or break marriages, and they should be making them. But sadly, in my case too, the in-laws were over enmeshed, and it was there was so many people in the marriage.
Yeah.
So that was,
absolutely.
You're right,
that can happen too.
You had that bonding.
Yeah. And and it doesn't mean, I say my husband is my best friend, and he is. But here's the thing that I've also learned about best friends.
Yeah.
We were in our early 20s when we got married. And so a lot has changed in 20 years. I'm a completely different person. He is a completely different person. Our goals and our aspirations and our likes and our dislikes and our desires and our wants and our needs, completely different. And that's okay. Here's the thing, is that we grow together. We decide together. And I think that, if I could put it succinctly, how you stay married for 20 years and beyond, you have to decide together that you're going to do it. You have to always
daily.
yeah, over and over and over, you have to choose again together.
Yeah.
Can't just be one or the other.
And it never stops.
We're gonna do this. And that I feel like now I'm getting to know a new person. And that's very frustrating in some ways because I'm like, I don't even know if I like this person anymore. I don't even know if I like myself sometimes. So how, am I supposed to like you with all your flaws that I've married for 20 years? Because really that's what it comes down to when you're marrying someone. You're not just marrying this amazing person who you love and you're very attracted to. You're marrying every single wrinkle they're going to get, every single health issue they're going to get, every single insecurity they've ever had and will get for the next 20 plus years.
And their package, we all come from a past. There's our family dynamic.
Trauma.
All of it.
Every trauma.
Yep. And so
and some of them they haven't even unpacked.
Yeah. Constant talking to each other. Do you know, like my husband and I just last week, and like I said, we're hitting where you are. We're not there yet. We have another 6 months? We're going to get there. But we, like you said, we grow, we evolve. And when we get healing from God, when God reveals truth to our hearts, we come up higher. There's spiritually, emotionally, physically, and we don't always want what we wanted at 20, 30, 40, 50, and that's okay. Now, I value the spirit of excellence and elegance and class. And for me, it's not about money things. It's about, I learned I'm an entrepreneur because I'm a visionary and I want to create. Well, with that, you need financial freedom. You need financial blessings to create. And I told my husband, I have these visions for the home I want to live in, my office. Like right now, you see all my lovely knickknacks and pictures. I've outgrown my space. Yeah. So I said, listen, when I ask for help for projects, because it seems I always have these projects. And I said, it's not to be critical. It's really not. It's not to say you're not doing this or that. But it's my ideal of space that I'm trying to evolve and come up to. I call it my caboose is catching up to my heart. I dream of this space I want to live in. Look at the magazines I always follow. And I dream big. I want to be that person that is a steward of millions, because that's kind of what my calling, because I'm going to give, we have a nonprofit that just started. I'm going to need a lot of money to help a lot of the single moms and their kids and the single dads that we want to help. That's going to take cash. Well, God he blesses you when you are a good steward of what you have currently. And he does bring us promotion to higher levels. He calls us to higher levels of responsibility. And that's for every person and man and woman out there. I want to be able to be that person that can be responsible. All right, what would that look like? If my bank account was this, or if I'm doing all these amazing things out there in the community, what's my life look like? What's my home look like? And so I said, I want to cover the gap. I want that dissidence. I've come to that place of pain where I don't want to live this way no more, where we do the garage once a year and everything piled up all year. And I have piles of paperwork to file. No, that is old to me now. I've done that all my life, on and off every year. Yeah, we clean the garage. We do the major dusting in the house. But that's a communication. And when I said those words to him of where my heart was and why, he now could do the loving act. And he actually did a thing and said, let's tackle this area this weekend. And we did. And he did it because he knew that it was bothering me. Every time I looked at that, there was mess. There was this clutter or that. And that's what it is for anything in your heart and your husband's heart. I love it. You talk it out.
Yeah. And I think sometimes as people who are, communicators, we're writers, speakers, coaches, I've also had a visionary gift. So I can completely identify with what you're saying.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But, we tend to think that we're communicating what is in our head. And sometimes what is here doesn't come out here because our minds are moving so quickly. And we're moving. And so that's one of the things I've had to train myself with my husband is to slow down, not because he's slow. Yeah. His mind just does not work the same mine does. And so I have to slow down. I have to take responsibility to make sure that I am communicating very clearly what my need is. And I think that also goes back to the good girl syndrome. is that we grew up not being allowed or permitted to really say what we needed. And so that's where like a lot of that emotional healing, like these journals and things like that, I really feel like the Lord is leading me to do comes from, because we felt like we didn't have a voice. And so now that we have a voice, we want to use it, but sometimes we don't know how to use it and we're still learning. And so, but it all goes back to that, those childhood wounds of not having a voice and not knowing how to express those desires. And that affects your marriage so much. That has been probably one of the number one causes of issues in our marriage specifically, is me being able to communicate my actual needs, whether it's financial needs, emotional needs, sexual needs, anything, any kind of need that I have has been very difficult for me to emote, even though like, here I am like emoting across your page and like being able to communicate with this with passion, my heart. When I get into those spots of not feeling sure of myself or not sure if I'm still going to be loved unconditionally to communicate those needs, it's hard. And so that needs training.
Yeah. Now tell me tell me when you came to when you came to Jesus in your way, and don't you think that thing we have inside us is what keeps us you?
I don't know how people do it without Jesus. I truly don't. And I know that's such a cliche Christian thing to say, but I don't know how people live without Jesus, the Holy Spirit specifically in your life. Yeah. So for me, like I said, I grew up Catholic. I have known about Jesus for so much of my life. And again, in my 30s and 40s, I'm learning that God has been with me for since I can remember. Honestly, He's been speaking to me since I was a very young child. I can see that now. You know, hindsight's always 20/20, right?
Yep, 20/20.
And so I see that now. I think of childhood experiences. I think of things about myself and my relationship with God. And I think about my childhood. And God has always been with me for a very long time. Now, me actually walking with Jesus, I don't think I really had that moment of like getting it until I was in my 20s. When I met my husband, probably like right around that time, I was like 21, 22 years old. I don't know that I have like that moment where I accepted Jesus Christ into my heart kind of thing. It just was, He's always been there, which I think sometimes is harder than that rags to riches kind of story, you know, let's sinner to saint kind of story.
But you can't know that He heard you, right? It's it became a two-way relationship, because that's how I started. One way talking, and then I learned He sees me, He knows me, and there's a person. Yeah. Now I'm running out of time, so I want to get to your what's your favorite scripture, or do you have one? Because there's so many.
I do. I have several, but the one because I knew you were going to ask me that question, and the one that immediately came to my head, and it might just be where I'm at in my life, is John 13, 34, and 35. You know, love one another as I have loved you. This is the greatest commandment. And then everyone will know that you are one of my disciples. And that speaks to where I'm at right now. I think in the world, what we're seeing is people who say they're Christians, and then their actions just don't follow it. And that's my bugaboo in my life right now.
Do you have a favorite book, Brianna?
I do. You know, Le Petit Prince, or The Little Prince. It was a French book by Antoine Saint-Exupéry. I totally butchered that. But it's about this little prince, and he goes to different planets, and it's about loneliness and friendship and love. And it looks like it's a children's book, but it's really for adults.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Do you have a favorite? Do you have someone that you consider a mentor, or just a favorite, like they taught you something just by their life?
Yeah, my 5th grade teacher, Mrs. Baker. And what's so crazy about that, she was just so kind and courteous and loving and safe. She was a safe person for me in 5th grade. And you know what? I'm still connected with her today. In fact, she just recently commented on a Facebook post about my 20-year marriage and that I had shared. And she's just still encouraging me and inspiring me today. And so, yeah, Mrs. Baker, thank you.
Now, what would you say to your younger self, or what would you say to someone that's really in the anger or in depression or grief or sorrow and just, they're having life and it wasn't what they signed up for? What would you say to them?
Do the work. Do the shadow work.
The work. Yes.
Do the work, and part of the work is resting. It's not so often like we just try to strive. And I think that do the work can mean rest, and do the work means listen, and do the work means get help, and do the work means be vulnerable and find your safe people. And it's a long process. It's not an overnight process,
Timetable.
but just do the work.
I love it. It's so nice to have this opportunity to talk with you. I'm so excited. You guys find her on Amazon, Briannalgeorge. Get her journal. Start today. Pick the one that resonates with you the most. And God bless you, Brianna, you and your family. And let's do another chat again. We'll have you.
Yes, I would love to, because there's so much more for us to say.
I know. There's so much more. I hope you have a great day.
You too.
And don't forget, if you're not following Georgette Beck on Facebook or Instagram, please go ahead and follow. And then please download this show and follow Junk to Jewels podcast with Georgette Beck. We have several guests coming along to share their challenging moments and their inspiration. Thank you for listening and watching. Take care.